The stars looked different tonight. John Miller stood at the window of his office in Washington, D.C., watching the unusual lights moving across the sky. After 30 years as a diplomat, he thought he had seen everything. He was wrong. The Vorsath ships had appeared 3 weeks ago. 7 massive vessels, each the size of a small city, now orbited Earth. Their arrival had changed everything. John straightened his tie and checked his watch. In 10 minutes, he would meet with the alien representatives again. Something about them made him uneasy. They looked almost human, except for their pale blue skin and large dark eyes. They spoke perfect English, which they claimed to have learned from our broadcasts. They said they came in peace. "You're overthinking again," said a voice behind him. John turned to see his assistant, Kate, holding a folder of documents. "Maybe," he said, "or maybe not enough." Kate handed him the folder. "The latest reports from our scientists. The Vorsath have offered to share their medical technology. They say they can cure cancer." John nodded, taking the folder. "What do they want in return?" "Just access to our historical records and cultural databases." John frowned. The Vorsath always wanted information. They were especially interested in Earth's wars and conflicts. They called it cultural exchange. But why focus so much on humanity's violent past? Across the country, in San Diego, Lieutenant Samantha Collins prepared her shuttle for launch. The Navy had assigned her to transport Vorsath delegates between Earth and their mothership. This would be her 5th trip. "All systems ready, Lieutenant?" asked her co-pilot, Eric. "Ready," said Samantha, running through her pre-flight checklist. "Our guests will arrive in 5 minutes." Eric lowered his voice. "Does something seem off about them to you?" Samantha glanced around to make sure they were alone. "Yesterday, I caught one of them using some kind of scanner on our navigation systems. When I asked about it, he said it was a translation device." "Did you report it?" "To who?" "Everyone's so excited about alien technology that no one wants to hear concerns." The shuttle door opened, and 3 Vorsath entered. They wore simple gray suits and moved with unusual grace in Earth's gravity. "Good morning," said the lead Vorsath. "We appreciate your assistance, Lieutenant Collins." "My pleasure," said Samantha, forcing a smile. "Please take your seats. We'll depart shortly." As the shuttle lifted off, Samantha noticed one of the Vorsath typing something into a small device. When he saw her watching, he quickly put it away. Back in Washington, John sat across from the Vorsath ambassador in a private meeting room. "We are pleased with the progress of our exchange," said the ambassador. His name, or at least what humans called him, was Zarek. "Your people have been most welcoming." "We're grateful for your generosity," said John, "especially the medical technology you've shared." Zarek smiled. It never quite reached his eyes. "It is nothing. Your species has great potential. With guidance, you could join the galactic community in time." "With guidance," repeated John. The wording bothered him. "We hope to stand as equals." "Of course," said Zarek smoothly. "I meant no offense." Later that evening, John reviewed the day's meetings. Something the ambassador had said stuck in his mind. "Your conflicts fascinate us. Most species destroy themselves before reaching the stars." John opened his computer and began typing a private message to his old friend at the Pentagon. His instincts told him to be careful, to prepare, just in case. On her return flight from the Vorsath mothership, Samantha took a different route than usual. She flew past several military satellites. The Vorsath delegates seemed unusually interested, taking notes. One asked why she changed course. She blamed bad weather, though the sky was clear. That night, both John and Samantha, strangers to each other, but sharing the same suspicion, looked up at the alien ships glowing in orbit. Neither could shake the feeling that Earth's first contact might not be as peaceful as everyone hoped. The Vorsath had arrived bearing gifts and friendly words, but as John often said from his years in diplomacy, beware of strangers bearing gifts too good to be true. 6 months had passed since the Vorsath arrived. Life on Earth seemed better with their advanced medicine and technology. But not everyone was happy. John Miller kept his worries to himself now. The last time he shared his concerns, his boss told him to stop making trouble. John sat at his desk in the embassy, reading reports about new Vorsath technology centers being built around the world. His phone rang. "Mr. Miller, the Vorsath delegation is requesting to move tomorrow's meeting forward. They'll be here in 30 minutes, said Kate. That's unusual, said John. Did they say why? Something about an important announcement. John thanked her and hung up. He opened his computer and sent a short message to his friend at the Pentagon. Watch the skies today. Then he deleted the message from his sent folder. On the U.S. Defiant, Samantha Collins was finishing her morning duties. The ship floated near Mars, keeping watch on a new Vorsath research station. Over the past months, she had collected evidence of the aliens scanning Earth's defenses, but her commanding officer had brushed off her reports. Samantha stood on the bridge when the alarm sounded. Multiple ships dropping out of light speed, shouted the radar operator. They're not ours. The main screen showed 20 large vessels appearing around Earth. More were emerging near Mars. Battle stations, ordered the captain. Lieutenant Collins, get us out of here. Emergency jump to the dark side of Mars. Yes, sir, said Samantha, rushing to the navigation console. The first explosion hit before she reached it. Back on Earth, John was walking toward the meeting room when the building shook. The lights went out. Then emergency power came on. Through the window, he saw Vorsath ships in the sky, much smaller than their motherships. They fired beams of light at buildings below. Kate, John shouted, running back to his office. He found her on the floor, bleeding from her head. We need to get out of here. What's happening? She asked, dazed. They've betrayed us, said John, helping her up. We need to move. John grabbed his emergency bag from under his desk. Inside was a gun, money, food, and a special phone that worked off the main networks. He had prepared for this day, hoping it would never come. As they reached the stairs, 3 Vorsath appeared in the hallway. John recognized Zarek among them. Mr. Miller, said Zarek calmly, how unfortunate to find you still here. Why? Asked John. We welcomed you. Your species has potential, said Zarek, but you are divided, violent. You need guidance to reach your full possibilities. Those who resist will not survive. John pushed Kate behind him. You planned this from the beginning. Of course, said Zarek. Now please come with us. Your knowledge of Earth's governments will be useful. No, said John, backing toward an emergency exit. He reached for his gun. One of the Vorsath raised a small device. John grabbed Kate and dived through the door just as a blast of energy hit where they had been standing. The door sealed shut behind them. Near Mars, the U.S. Defiant was badly damaged, but still moving. Half the crew was dead. The captain lay dying on the bridge. Collins, he gasped, you're in command now. Get to Earth. Warn them. Sir, said Samantha, tears in her eyes, Earth is already under attack. Communications are down. The captain gripped her hand. Then save who you can. Fight back. He died as another explosion rocked the ship. Get us into the shadow of Phobos, ordered Samantha, and find any other surviving ships. On Earth, cities burned. Vorsath ships controlled the skies. Their message played on all working devices. Your species shows potential but lacks discipline. Submit to our guidance or face extinction. John and Kate hid in an abandoned subway tunnel. His special phone beeped with an encrypted message. Resistance forming. Rocky Mountains base. Get here if you can. John looked at Kate. We're going to fight back. Above them, the world as they knew it was ending. 3 years had passed since the day the world changed. John Miller looked nothing like the clean-cut diplomat he once was. His beard was long, his clothes worn, and a scar ran across his left cheek. He sat in a dimly lit room deep under the Rocky Mountains, studying maps on an old computer. "The supply convoy will be here in 2 days," said Kate, now his second in command. She had changed too. Her eyes were harder, her voice stronger. "If they make it," said John, "Vorsath patrols have increased in the eastern valleys." "They'll make it," said Kate. "Amy is leading them. She knows how to avoid the aliens." John nodded. Amy was one of their best. In 3 years, their resistance cell had grown from a handful of survivors to over 300 people. They weren't the only ones fighting back. Across what remained of the free world, humans refused to give up. A young man rushed into the room. "Sir, we've got a transmission from Captain Collins." John followed him to the communications room, where a static-filled screen showed Samantha Collins. Her face was thinner than John remembered from their first meeting a year ago, when her fleet of ships had made contact with the resistance. "Miller, can you hear me?" asked Samantha. "Yes, barely." "Are you safe?" "For now. We're hiding in the asteroid belt. The Vorsath just destroyed our base on Europa, but we got most of our people out. I have news you need to hear." The screen flickered as Samantha continued. "We raided a Vorsath research ship 3 days ago. We found something important. Dr. Ward is working on it now." Dr. Lisa Ward appeared next to Samantha. Once a famous scientist, she now worked with the space resistance. "Mr. Miller," said Lisa, "the Vorsath have a weakness. Their ships use a quantum communication network. I think I can disrupt it." "How?" asked John. "It's complicated," said Lisa. "But if it works, we could temporarily shut down their systems. It won't last long, maybe 30 minutes, but it's something." 30 minutes might be enough," said John, mind racing. "When will it be ready?" 2 weeks, maybe 3. We need to test it first." "Do it," said John. "And then get to our location if you can. We need to plan this carefully." The screen went dark as the connection broke. John turned to Kate. "Tell General Jackson we need to meet. This could be the break we've been waiting for." Later that night, John stood outside the mountain base, looking at the stars. Somewhere up there, Samantha and her crews fought their own battles. They had started with just her damaged ship, the U.S. Defiant. Now they had a small fleet of salvaged and rebuilt vessels. Couldn't sleep. General Peter Jackson joined him outside. Once the head of the U.S. Army, now he led the military side of the resistance. "Just thinking," said John. "If Lisa's device works, we could strike a real blow." "What's your plan?" asked the general. "The Vorsath main base is in Old Beijing. If we could get a team in there during the blackout, we might access their central systems, learn more about them, maybe find a bigger weakness." "It's risky," said Jackson. "Very risky." "Everything is risky now," said John. "But we need to do more than just survive. We need to hit back." Inside the mountain, in a small workshop, a group of engineers worked on weapons made from stolen Vorsath technology. In another room, children learned about the world before the invasion. Some were too young to remember it. Miles away, a small team led by Amy moved carefully through the night, bringing medicine and food to the base. They hid as a Vorsath patrol ship passed overhead. In space, Lisa worked on her device while Samantha prepared her ships. And across Earth, other resistance groups fought their own battles, sent their own messages, saved who they could. Humanity was beaten but not broken. The Vorsath had made a critical mistake. They had let some humans live. And those humans would never stop fighting back. Daniel Rodriguez pressed his body against the cold wall. The Vorsath guard walked past, not seeing him in the shadows. Daniel had been inside the alien research facility for 3 hours. So far, he had avoided being caught. But time was running out. Daniel was not a soldier before the invasion. He had been a computer expert, working for a bank. Now he used those skills for the resistance. His mission tonight: get into the Vorsath computer system and steal information. The guard turned a corner. Daniel moved quickly down the hallway to a small room filled with alien technology. He pulled out a device Dr. Ward had made for him. It looked like a simple flash drive, but it could connect to Vorsath systems. Daniel plugged it into a port on the main computer. Strange symbols filled the screen. The device translated them into English. Daniel began searching through files. Most were things the Resistance already knew: maps of Vorsath bases, patrol schedules, weapons data. Then he found something new, a file labeled Species Evaluation. He opened it. His eyes widened as he read. Page after page showed different alien races, hundreds of them. Some looked almost human. Others were completely strange. All were marked as subjugated or eliminated. Earth was just the latest in a long line of conquered worlds. Daniel kept reading. The Vorsath had a system. They would contact a new species, pretend to be friendly, then attack. They believed this was a test. If a species could fight them off, they were worthy of respect. If not, they deserved to be ruled or destroyed. No species has successfully resisted after initial defeat, the file said. Most accept their place within 3 planetary cycles. Daniel copied everything he could. His hands shook. Humanity was not special to the Vorsath. They were just another test subject, another potential slave race. An alarm suddenly blared. Daniel pulled the device free and ran. He had stayed too long. 2 days later, Daniel sat in the war room of the mountain base. Around the table were John Miller, General Jackson, Kate, and several other Resistance leaders. On a screen, Captain Collins and Dr. Ward watched from their ship. "You're sure about this?" asked General Jackson after Daniel finished his report. "I saw it myself," said Daniel. "We're not their first victims, maybe not even their 100th. They'd been doing this for a long time." "That explains why they know exactly how to control a conquered planet," said John. "They've had practice." "There's more," said Daniel. "They see this as a form of natural selection. They think they're doing the universe a favor by weeding out the weak species, and no one has ever beaten them after losing the first battle," asked Samantha from the screen. "Not according to their records," said Daniel. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Lisa spoke up from the screen. "Well, they haven't met humans before," she said. "My device is ready. We can disrupt their network for 30 minutes, maybe more." John looked around the room. "Then we do what no one has done before. We show them they made a mistake letting any of us live." "We'll need a bigger plan than just raiding one base," said General Jackson. "If we're going to strike, we need to hit them hard enough that they can't recover." "What if we captured their regional governor?" suggested Kate. "The one in Beijing. He might have access codes to their main systems." "That would be heavily guarded," said Samantha. "Not if all their systems are down," said John. "Lisa's device would give us a window." Daniel spoke up. "I found something else in their files. The Vorsath have a homeworld. It's not one of the ships in orbit. It's a planet, far from here. That's where their leaders are. That's where they're vulnerable." "Can we reach it?" asked General Jackson. "Not yet," said Samantha. "But if we get more information." John stood up. "Then that's our goal. Operation Phoenix begins now. We'll hit the Beijing base, capture the governor, and get what we need to take the fight to their home." Around the table, faces showed hope for the first time in years. They would do what no other species had done. They would fight back after defeat. They would show the Vorsath that humans were different. They would show them that letting even one human live was their biggest mistake. The day of Operation Phoenix arrived after weeks of planning. The Resistance had gathered their best fighters. Weapons were checked and rechecked. Everyone knew their jobs. John Miller looked at the small device in his hand. Lisa had made 5 of them. When activated, they would disrupt the Vorsath communication network. "All teams report ready," said Kate, walking up to him. She wore black body armor taken from a Vorsath patrol they had ambushed. "And Captain Collins?" asked John. "Her ships are in position near Mars. They'll attack the Vorsath space stations on your signal." John nodded and put the device in his pocket. He picked up his rifle and faced the 50 men and women who would go with him to Beijing. General Jackson stood at the front, checking his own weapon. "Remember, said John to the group. "We have 30 minutes once the disruptors activate. Get in, find the governor, get the data, get out. No heroes today." In space, Samantha Collins sat in the captain's chair of the U.S. Defiant. Around her ship, 12 other vessels waited. Some were old Earth ships. Others were captured Vorsath craft. All were heavily armed. "All ships report ready, Captain," said her first officer. Samantha checked the time. 5 minutes until Operation Phoenix begins. Remind all captains, hit hard, hit fast, then retreat to the rendezvous point. This is a diversion, not a battle we can win. Back on Earth, Dr. Lisa Ward sat in a hidden bunker with Daniel and a team of technicians. Her job was to monitor the disruptors and extend their effect if possible. "The Beijing team is in position," said Daniel, listening to his radio. "Mountain teams are ready. Underground cells in Europe and Africa are standing by." Lisa checked her equipment one last time. "Once I activate this, there's no going back. The Vorsath will know we can hurt them." "They already hurt us," said Daniel. "Now it's our turn." The clock hit 0. Lisa pressed the button. Across Earth and in orbit, Vorsath systems went down. Their ships drifted. Their bases went dark. Their soldiers suddenly lost contact with each other. In space, Samantha gave the order. "All ships, attack." Her fleet moved forward, firing at the now vulnerable Vorsath stations. In Beijing, John, General Jackson, and their team rushed into what had once been the Forbidden City, now a Vorsath command center. With the alien systems down, they met less resistance than expected. They fought their way to the central building where the governor would be. 5 minutes gone," said Kate, checking her watch. "We're making good time," said John. They reached the governor's chamber and found 3 Vorsath guards protecting him. A brief firefight left the guards dead. The governor, tall even for a Vorsath, stood calmly as the humans entered. "You surprise me," he said in perfect English. "No species has ever attempted this before." "We're full of surprises," said General Jackson, his gun aimed at the alien's head. "Daniel, get what we need." Daniel connected his device to the governor's private terminal. "Downloading now." 2 minutes. "Why fight?" asked the governor. "You cannot win. You will only die sooner." "Maybe," said John, "but we'll die free. And we'll hurt you before we go." The download finished. "Got it," said Daniel. "Star maps, jump coordinates, everything." "Time to go," said Kate. 20 minutes left on the disruptors. As they turned to leave, an explosion shook the building. Through the windows, they saw Vorsath ships descending. Some systems were coming back online faster than expected. "Move," shouted General Jackson. They ran through the corridors, fighting more Vorsath soldiers now. Outside, chaos reigned as resistance fighters battled aliens across the city. Another explosion, closer. Part of the ceiling collapsed. General Jackson pushed John forward just as rubble fell between them. "Jackson," shouted John, "get that data out." The general shouted back, "I'll hold them here." John hesitated, then ran with Kate and Daniel. Behind them, they heard General Jackson's gun firing. Then silence. They reached the extraction point as the disruptors failed completely. A small aircraft waited for them, engines running. "Go, go, go," shouted John as they jumped in. The craft lifted off as Vorsath ships filled the sky. John looked back at Beijing, burning below them. The operation had succeeded, but at great cost. In his pocket was the key to the Vorsath homeworld. And with it, humanity's last hope. 2 years had passed since Operation Phoenix. The data stolen from the Vorsath governor had been worth General Jackson's sacrifice. Now humanity prepared its boldest move yet. Deep in the asteroid belt, the resistance had hollowed out Ceres, the largest asteroid. They had turned it into a massive ship, also named Phoenix. John Miller stood on an observation deck, watching thousands of people work. "Hard to believe we've come this far," said Samantha Collins, joining him. "After the Beijing mission, She had brought her fleet to help with the project. Jackson would be proud, said John. The last of the engines are installed, said Samantha. Lisa says they'll be ready for testing tomorrow. Dr. Ward had used the stolen Vorsaf technology to create jump drives that could take them to the stars, specifically to the Vorsaf homeworld. Daniel Rodriguez approached them, carrying a tablet. Final population count, 49,782 people, he said. Everyone we could save. John nodded. These were the last free humans they could find. The rest of humanity was either dead or under tight Vorsaf control. The enemy had cracked down hard after Beijing, making further large-scale resistance impossible. What about the weapon? Asked John. Lisa says it's ready, replied Daniel. She based it on the disruptor technology, but made it permanent. Once deployed, it will spread through their entire network. And you're sure it won't affect us? Asked Samantha. It targets their specific technology. We'll be safe. Later that day, John, Samantha, Lisa, and Daniel met in the command center. Kate joined them, now one of the ship's section leaders. The Vorsaf don't know what we're doing yet, said Kate, but they're increasing patrols in the belt. They'll find us soon. How long until we can jump? Asked John. 3 days, said Lisa. The drives need final calibration. We may not have 3 days, said Samantha, pointing to the radar. Long-range scans show a large fleet moving this way. Then we need a diversion, said John. Something big enough to keep them busy while we finish. They all knew what that meant. Someone would have to sacrifice themselves. I'll contact the Earth cells, said Kate. If they coordinate, they could hit multiple targets, draw attention away from the belt. They won't survive, said Daniel quietly. None of us on Earth will survive either way, said John. But the Phoenix must. It carries the last free humans, and our only chance for revenge. The next day, resistance cells across Earth launched simultaneous attacks on Vorsaf bases. It was suicide, but they knew their purpose. In space, the Vorsaf fleet split, with many ships returning to Earth to deal with the sudden uprising. On the Phoenix, final preparations accelerated. People moved into suspended animation chambers that would protect them during the 15-year journey to the Vorsaf homeworld. Jump drives at 95%, reported Lisa on the final day. We can leave in 3 hours. The Vorsaf have found us, said Samantha, watching the radar. 5 ships approaching. ETA 2 hours. We need to hold them off, said John. Samantha, take your best pilots. Use the fighters we built. Buy us time. Samantha nodded. It's been an honor, she said, saluting him before running to the hangar bay. John turned to Lisa and Daniel. Get everyone else into suspension. Start the launch sequence. As the last civilians entered suspension, John stood in the command center. On the screens, he watched Samantha's small fighter fleet engage the approaching Vorsaf ships. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but fought with desperate courage. 2 Vorsaf ships exploded. A 3rd was damaged, but human fighters fell one by one. Jump capability reached, announced Lisa, returning to the command center. Samantha, asked John over the radio. Get out of here, came her strained voice. We'll hold them as long as we can. John closed his eyes for a moment. Then he gave the order. Start the jump countdown. The Phoenix rumbled as its massive engines fired. The asteroid ship moved slowly at first, then faster. The remaining fighters, including Samantha's, formed a last defensive line. As the jump drive activated, John saw a flash of light. Samantha's fighter rammed a Vorsaf ship, creating an explosion that blinded the screens. Then stars stretched into lines as the Phoenix, carrying humanity's last hope, jumped into the darkness between stars. Their 15-year journey to the Vorsaf homeworld had begun. 15 years had passed in the darkness of space. Inside the Phoenix, John Miller opened his eyes as his suspension chamber hissed open. He felt old. He was old now, his hair gray, his face lined. But they had arrived. Status report, he said, his voice rough from years of silence. "All systems functional," said Daniel Rodriguez, already up and monitoring the main computer. He had aged too, but his eyes still held their sharp intelligence. "We're approaching the Vorsat home system." Lisa Ward joined them, moving slowly. The years had been hard on her body, but her mind remained brilliant. "The weapon is ready," she said. "I've made improvements during the journey. The ship's computer helped me." Kate arrived last, now second in command of the Phoenix. "All sections report ready. The people are waking up." John looked at the screen showing their destination. A blue-green planet orbited a yellow star. It looked peaceful from a distance. Hard to believe it was home to the species that had nearly destroyed humanity. "Begin approach," ordered John. "Stealth systems at maximum." The Phoenix moved quietly into the Vorsath system. They passed defense stations and patrol ships without being detected. Their ship's outer layer, made from special materials that absorbed scanning signals, kept them invisible. "We're in range," said Lisa after several hours. "I can deploy the weapon now." "Wait," said John. "I want them to know who did this. I want them to hear our message." He sat at the communication station and activated the system. "Target their main government frequency." The screen showed the connection was made. John took a deep breath and spoke. "This is John Miller of Earth. You came to our world. You pretended friendship, then you attacked without warning. You killed billions of us. You thought we were just another species to conquer." On the Vorset homeworld, panic spread as the unexpected message played on all channels. Their leaders gathered, trying to locate the source. "You have conquered many worlds," continued John. "Your records showed hundreds of species that submitted to you. You told yourselves this was natural, that the strong should rule the weak." The Vorsath tracked the signal to a ship hiding near their planet. They sent their fleet to destroy it. "But you made a mistake," said John. "You let some of us live. You didn't understand what humans do when cornered. We fight, we remember, and we never forgive." Lisa watched her screen. "Their ships are coming. 2 minutes until they're in range." John nodded and continued. "This message is simple. We let you live once, never again." He turned to Lisa. "Do it." Lisa activated the weapon. A pulse of energy fired from the Phoenix, invisible but powerful. It hit the planet below and spread instantly through all Vorsath systems. On the planet, everything Vorsath technology stopped working. Ships froze in space. Weapons failed. Communications died. The pulse continued outward, traveling faster than light through the quantum network that connected their empire. "It's working," said Lisa, watching the data. "Their entire system is crashing, and the secondary program is activating." The secondary program was the cruel part of their revenge. It would permanently rewrite the Vorsath systems to prevent them from ever developing space travel again. It would also broadcast a warning to any alien ships that approached their world, telling of their crimes against other species. "It's done," said Daniel after several minutes. "Their empire is finished." John looked at the planet below. "Set course away from here. We've done what we came to do." Months later, John stood on the observation deck with Lisa, Daniel, and Kate. The Phoenix flew through unknown space, searching for a new home. "Do you think we did the right thing?" asked Kate, watching the stars. "They gave us no choice," said John. "They would have done the same to the next world they found." A young girl joined them by the window. She had been born after they left Earth. "Where are we going?" she asked. Daniel smiled and pointed to a distant star. "Home," he said. "We're going to find a new home." John watched the girl's face, full of hope. The Vorsath had destroyed Earth, but they had failed to destroy humanity. And that would be their eternal punishment, knowing they had tried to break the human spirit and failed. Humanity would live on, and the stars would know their story.